The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 a.m., but Lisa was already awake. She had been lying in bed for the past hour, staring at the ceiling and running through her interview answers one more time. Today was the day that could change everything for her and her two kids. She quietly slipped out of bed, careful not to wake 8-year-old Amy and 5-year-old Ben, who were still fast asleep in the next room. The small apartment was freezing because she had turned off the heat to save money. Every dollar counted now. It had been 8 long months since the accounting firm where she worked suddenly shut down, leaving her scrambling to find another job. In the bathroom mirror, Lisa looked at her tired face. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of countless sleepless nights worrying about bills, rent, and putting food on the table. But today she was determined to look professional. She had spent an hour last night ironing her only business, suit, a navy blue blazer and skirt she had bought from a thrift store 3 years ago. The coffee maker gurgled to life as Lisa carefully applied the makeup she had been saving for special occasions. She wanted to look confident and capable for the people at Sterling Tech. This wasn't just any job interview. This was for a senior financial analyst position at one of the biggest companies in the city. The kind of job that could finally give her family the stability they desperately needed. As she reached for her shoes, her heart dropped. The black heels she had planned to wear, her only pair of professional shoes, were sitting by the door exactly where she had left them the night before. But something was wrong, very wrong. The heel on the right shoe had completely separated from the sole overnight. Maybe it was the dampness from yesterday's rain, or maybe the old glue had just given up after years of wear. Lisa picked up the shoe with shaking hands, watching as the heel dangled by a thin strip of leather. No, 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 she whispered, trying to press the pieces back together. Not today. Please, not today. She looked at the clock. 6:15 a.m. The interview was at 9:30 and she needed to take 2 buses to get to the other side of the city. There was no time to find another solution, and even if there was, she didn't have money for new shoes. Her last $20 was already set aside for bus fare. Lisa rummaged through her small closet, hoping to find something else to wear. Her old sneakers were dirty and had holes. Her casual flats were completely worn out. The black heels were literally her only option. In the kitchen drawer, she found a roll of clear packing tape. It wasn't pretty, but it might work. She carefully wrapped the tape around the heel, trying to make it as invisible as possible. The result looked terrible up close, but from a distance, maybe no one would notice. "Mommy, what are you doing?" Amy appeared in the doorway, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Just fixing my shoe, sweetheart," Lisa said, forcing a smile. "Go back to bed for a little while. I'll make you breakfast before I leave." Amy yawned and shuffled back to her room. Lisa looked down at her taped shoe and felt tears threatening to spill over. This was supposed to be her big chance, and she would be walking into the most important interview of her life with a broken shoe held together by tape. She made breakfast for the kids. Toast, with the last bit of peanut butter and some juice she had, watered down to make it last longer. Ben complained that he wanted cereal, but there wasn't any left. Amy was old enough to understand that money was tight, so she just ate her toast quietly and helped her little brother get ready. "Mrs. Chen will pick you up for school today," Lisa told them, referring to their neighbor who had been helping out since Lisa lost her job. "I'll be back this afternoon and we'll celebrate with pizza if things go well." It was a promise she wasn't sure she could keep, but the kids needed hope as much as she did. The bus ride to downtown took 45 minutes, and with every step Lisa took to the bus stop, she could feel the tape on her shoe stretching and pulling. By the time she reached the city center, she had to stop twice to rewrap the heel more tightly. Sterling Tech's headquarters rose 40 stories into the sky, all glass and steel and intimidation. Lisa stood across the street for a moment, watching important-looking people in expensive suits walk in and out of the revolving doors. Everyone looked like they belonged there. Everyone except her. She pulled out the folder containing her resume, references, and the presentation she had been working on for weeks. While other candidates probably focused on their qualifications, Lisa had done something different. She had spent every free moment researching Sterling Tech's financial reports, looking for problems she could solve and improvements she could make. Her analysis had revealed inefficiencies in their vendor management system that were costing the company millions of dollars every year. She had charts, graphs, and a detailed plan to streamline their operations. It had taken her until 3 a.m. every night for the past month, but she had created something she was genuinely proud of. The security guard at the front desk directed her to the 32nd floor. As the elevator climbed higher and higher, Lisa felt her stomach drop with each floor. She checked her reflection in the polished elevator doors one more time, smoothed down her hair, and took a deep breath. The reception area on the 32nd floor was like nothing she had ever seen. Marble floors, expensive artwork on the walls, and furniture that probably cost more than she made in a year, back when she had a job. And there were people everywhere. Other candidates, she realized. Lots of them, Lisa Rodriguez. The receptionist smiled professionally. You're here for the senior analyst position. Please take a seat. We'll begin the group orientation in a few minutes. Lisa found an empty chair near the back of the room and tried to make herself invisible. She tucked her damaged foot under her chair and looked around at the other candidates. They all looked so polished, so confident, so expensive. The woman next to her was wearing a suit that Lisa was pretty sure cost more than 3 months of her rent. Her shoes were clearly designer, with red soles that Lisa had seen in magazines. Her briefcase was leather and looked brand new. A man across the room was discussing his MBA from some prestigious university with another candidate. They threw around terms like networking events and corporate retreats like they were talking about the weather. Lisa felt completely out of place, but she reminded herself why she was here. This wasn't about fitting in with these people. This was about proving that she could do the job better than anyone else in this room. She had the skills, the knowledge, and most importantly, the hunger to succeed. As she waited for her name to be called, Lisa quietly reviewed her notes one more time. She might not have the fanciest clothes or the most expensive education, but she had something that couldn't be bought: the determination of a mother who would do anything to give her children a better life. The waiting room at Sterling Tech buzzed with nervous energy, but it was the kind of nervous energy that came from people who were used to winning. Lisa counted 34 name tags on the reception desk, which meant 34 people competing for the same position that could save her family from losing their home. She chose a seat in the corner, strategically placing her portfolio bag in front of her feet to hide the taped shoe. The clear tape was already starting to come loose from all the walking, and she could feel it pulling away from the leather with each small movement. Around her, conversations flowed easily between candidates who seemed to know each other, from previous interviews or networking events. A woman with perfectly styled blonde hair was discussing her recent promotion at a consulting firm. A tall man in an expensive gray suit mentioned his connections to Sterling Tech's board members. Everyone seemed so comfortable, so confident, so completely at home in this world of corporate success. Lisa pulled out her phone to check the time and saw 3 missed calls from her landlord. Her stomach twisted into knots. Mr. Peterson had been patient about the late rent, but his patience was running out. She quickly put the phone away and tried to focus on the interview prep materials in her folder. "Oh my goodness, did you see that?" The voice came from directly behind Lisa. She didn't turn around, but she could tell the woman was trying to whisper and failing badly at it. "See what?" Another voice responded. The woman in the corner. "Look at her shoe." Lisa's cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she kept her eyes on her papers, pretending to review her notes. Maybe if she didn't react, they would stop talking about it. "Is that tape?" The second woman sounded genuinely shocked, like she had never seen anything so ridiculous in her life. "It has to be. How desperate do you have to be to show up to Sterling Tech with a broken shoe held together by tape? I mean, seriously, this is a senior-level position at one of the most prestigious companies in the city." Lisa's hand started shaking slightly as she turned the pages of her presentation. She had spent weeks perfecting this analysis, finding ways Sterling Tech could save millions of dollars by reorganizing their vendor relationships, but all these people could see was her damaged shoe. "Maybe she's lost," the first woman continued, not even trying to lower her voice anymore. Maybe she thinks this is a job fair for administrative assistants or something." A few other candidates started looking in Lisa's direction. She could feel their eyes on her, judging everything from her thrift store suit to her obviously home-done manicure. One man actually took out his phone and seemed to be taking a picture, probably to share the story with his friends later. "I heard they only invited 34 people out of over 300 applications," someone else chimed in. "How did someone like that even make it past the initial screening?" Lisa wanted to disappear. She wanted to gather her things and walk out of this building and never come back. But then she thought about Amy and Ben, probably sitting in their classroom right now, not knowing that their mother was fighting the most important battle of their lives 32 floors above the city streets. She straightened her shoulders and continued reading through her materials. Let them talk. Let them judge. She knew something they didn't know, that she had found problems in Sterling Tech's financial structure that none of these fancy MBA graduates had probably even thought to look for. The receptionist walked into the waiting area with a clipboard. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sterling Tech's final assessment day. We'll be conducting individual interviews throughout the morning, followed by a group presentation exercise this afternoon. Lisa's heart rate picked up. She had prepared for individual interviews, but no one had mentioned a group presentation. Your interview slots have been randomly assigned, the receptionist continued. When your name is called, please proceed to conference room B down the hall. The interview panel consists of 3 department heads and, she paused for effect, CEO Jonathan Sterling himself will be sitting in on today's interviews. A murmur of excitement rippled through the room. Several candidates exchanged knowing looks as if having the CEO present was exactly what they had expected. Lisa felt her palms getting sweaty. She had researched the department heads, but interviewing in front of the actual CEO was something she hadn't prepared for. Lisa Rodriguez. Her name echoed through the waiting room, and she realized she was the first one to be called. As she stood up, the tape on her shoe made a small ripping sound that seemed incredibly loud in the suddenly quiet room. Good luck, someone whispered behind her. But Lisa could hear the sarcasm in their voice. She walked toward the door, her damaged heel making a soft slapping sound against the marble floor with each step. Behind her, she heard someone barely suppress a giggle. Another person whispered, "This should be entertaining." Lisa's face felt hot with embarrassment, but she forced herself to walk with as much dignity as she could manage. She had made it this far. She had survived 8 months of unemployment, countless rejection letters, and the constant worry about providing for her children. She wasn't going to let a broken shoe and some mean comments stop her now. At the conference room door, she paused and took a deep breath. Through the glass, she could see 4 people sitting around a large table. 3 of them were looking at paperwork. But the 4th, a man with gray hair and an expensive suit who she recognized as CEO Jonathan Sterling from the company website, was looking directly at her. For just a moment, their eyes met through the glass. Instead of the judgment she had been seeing in the waiting room, she saw something different in his expression. Curiosity, maybe, or perhaps just professional interest. Lisa knocked on the door and heard someone call, "Come in." As she entered the room, she made a split-second decision. Instead of trying to hide her shoe or make excuses, she was going to own this moment. These people were going to judge her anyway. She might as well give them something worth judging. "Good morning," she said, extending her hand to the nearest panel member. "I'm Lisa Rodriguez, and I'm excited to show you how I can help Sterling Tech save 12% on operational costs while improving vendor relationship efficiency." The confidence in her voice surprised even her. Behind all the embarrassment and worry, she remembered something important. She belonged here not because of what she was wearing, but because of what she knew. CEO Sterling leaned forward slightly, and Lisa caught something that looked almost like approval in his eyes. "Please have a seat, Lisa. We're very interested to hear what you've discovered." As she sat down and opened her portfolio, Lisa heard her shoe tape crackle slightly. But for the first time all morning, she didn't care. She had 25 minutes to prove that she was exactly what this company needed, and she was going to make every single minute count. Lisa sat across from the 4-person interview panel, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone in the room could hear it. The 3 department heads looked exactly like what she had expected, polished, professional, and slightly intimidating. But CEO Jonathan Sterling was different. He seemed genuinely interested rather than just going through the motions. "So, Lisa," began the woman on the left, glancing down at her resume, "tell us why you think you're the right fit for Sterling Tech." It was a standard question, the kind Lisa had practiced dozens of times in front of her bathroom mirror. But sitting here now with her taped shoe and second-hand suit, the rehearsed answers felt wrong. Instead, she decided to tell the truth. "I'm here because I need this job," she said simply. "Not want it, need it. And when someone needs something this badly, they work harder than anyone else to make sure they succeed." The department heads exchanged glances. It wasn't the typical corporate answer they were probably used to hearing. But CEO Sterling leaned forward, clearly interested. "That's honest," he said. "But needing a job and being qualified for it are two different things. What makes you think you can handle the responsibilities of a senior financial analyst at a company this size?" This was Lisa's moment. She opened her portfolio and pulled out the presentation she had spent weeks creating. Her hands had stopped shaking, and suddenly all the embarrassment from the waiting room disappeared. This was about numbers and analysis and solutions, things she understood better than anyone. "I've spent the last month studying Sterling Tech's financial reports," she began, spreading her charts across the table. "And I found something that I think you'll find very interesting." She pointed to the first chart, which showed Sterling Tech's vendor expenses over the past 3 years. "You're currently working with 47 different suppliers for office materials, technology equipment, and facility maintenance. But here's what caught my attention." Lisa flipped to the next page, which showed a detailed breakdown of costs and contracts. 15 of these vendors are providing identical services at vastly different price points. You're paying Dataflow Solutions $3,000 a month for server maintenance, while TechCorp is charging you $5,000 for the exact same service. The department head in charge of operations sat up straighter. "How did you identify these discrepancies?" "I cross-referenced every vendor contract mentioned in your quarterly reports with their service descriptions and payment schedules," Lisa explained. "It took me about 60 hours, but I found a pattern. Sterling Tech is essentially paying premium prices for standard services because different departments are negotiating with vendors independently." She turned to another chart, this one showing potential savings. "If you consolidated these redundant services and renegotiated contracts based on volume purchasing, you could save approximately $1.2 million in the first year alone." CEO Sterling picked up one of her charts and studied it carefully. "This level of analysis, how long did this take you to complete?" "About 3 weeks of working every night after my kids went to bed," Lisa admitted. "I wanted to come here with more than just my qualifications. I wanted to show you exactly how I could add value to your company from day one." The room fell silent as the panel reviewed her materials. Lisa watched their faces, trying to read their reactions. The operations head was nodding as he looked through her vendor analysis. The finance director was making notes in the margins of her cost-saving projections. "Your methodology is impressive," said the finance director, "but implementing changes this significant would require buy-in from multiple departments. How would you handle the resistance you'd inevitably face?" Lisa had thought about this too. Change is always hard, especially when it affects people's established relationships with vendors. "But I'd start by presenting the data exactly like this, showing the concrete financial benefits. Then I'd work with each department to understand their specific needs and concerns. The goal isn't to disrupt what's working, but to eliminate what's wasteful." "And what about the vendors who would lose contracts in this consolidation?" CEO Sterling asked. "That's actually addressed in my full analysis," Lisa said, flipping to another section. "Several of the higher-priced vendors are offering services that Sterling Tech doesn't actually need. Instead of canceling those contracts entirely, I'd recommend restructuring them. Dataflow Solutions, for example, is excellent at server maintenance but overpriced. However, they also offer cybersecurity consulting, which your current IT setup could really benefit from." She could see she had their attention now. The awkwardness about her appearance had completely faded, replaced by genuine professional interest in her ideas. "You mentioned cybersecurity," said the operations head. "What specifically did you notice about our current setup?" Lisa smiled. This was the part she was most proud of. "Your quarterly reports mentioned 3 separate cybersecurity audits in the past year, each costing around $50,000. But you're having the same basic vulnerabilities identified repeatedly. Instead of paying for audits, you need systematic improvements." She pulled out her final chart. "I mapped out your current security expenses against industry standards for companies your size. You're spending 40% more than necessary on reactive security measures instead of investing in proactive protection." CEO Sterling set down her charts and looked directly at her. "Lisa, this analysis is remarkably thorough, but I have to ask, why Sterling Tech? With skills like this, you could probably get interviews at any major corporation in the city." The question caught Lisa off guard. She thought about giving another professional answer, but something in CEO Sterling's expression made her want to be honest again. Because Sterling Tech was the only company that called me back, she said quietly. I've been unemployed for 8 months. I've sent out over 200 resumes and had maybe a dozen interviews. Most companies see the gap in my employment and assume I'm not serious about my career. But the truth is, I've been using this time to improve my skills and learn about companies I want to work for. She gestured to her presentation materials. This analysis represents hundreds of hours of work that I did for free, just hoping for the chance to prove what I can do. I chose to research Sterling Tech this thoroughly because your company has a reputation for promoting based on performance, not just connections or credentials. The room was quiet for a moment. Then CEO Sterling asked, "What would you do if we offered you this position?" Lisa's heart jumped, but she tried to stay calm. I'd implement this cost-saving plan within the first 90 days. I'd also ask for permission to analyze other areas of potential efficiency: payroll processing, supply chain management, facility costs. I believe every dollar saved is a dollar that can be invested in growth and employee development. And personally, he asked, what would this job mean for you? Lisa felt tears threatening to spill over, but she blinked them back. It would mean my children could stay in their school district. It would mean I could pay my rent on time and buy groceries without counting every dollar. It would mean proving to myself that all those nights of studying and working toward my CPA while raising 2 kids by myself were worth it. The interview panel exchanged looks, and Lisa saw CEO Sterling nod slightly to the others. Thank you, Lisa, he said, standing up. We have several more candidates to interview today, but we'll be in touch very soon. As Lisa gathered her materials, her hands were steady for the first time all day. Walking back toward the waiting room, she heard her shoe tape crackle with each step, but she no longer cared. She'd just given the best interview of her life. Lisa walked back into the waiting room and the conversations immediately stopped. All eyes turned to her as she made her way to her corner seat, her taped shoe making that familiar soft slapping sound on the marble floor. She could practically feel the other candidates trying to read her face, looking for any sign of how the interview had gone. That was quick, someone whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Probably didn't take long for them to realize their mistake. Another candidate, a woman with an expensive handbag, smirked. I wonder if they even let her finish her presentation or if they just politely ended it early. Lisa sat down and gathered her materials, ignoring the comments floating around her. Inside, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: genuine confidence. Whatever happened next, she knew she had given everything she had. She had presented ideas that could save Sterling Tech millions of dollars, and she had done it with the kind of thorough analysis that took real skill and dedication. Lisa Rodriguez? The receptionist appeared again. You're all set for today. Thank you for coming in. As Lisa stood to leave, she heard one of the candidates mutter, Well, that's one down. 33 to go. The bus ride home felt different this time. Instead of the crushing anxiety she had felt that morning, Lisa found herself replaying the interview in her mind. CEO Sterling's questions, the way the finance director had taken notes on her cost-saving analysis, the genuine interest she had seen in their faces when she explained her methodology. By the time she reached her apartment building, reality was starting to set in again. Even if the interview had gone well, there were still 33 other candidates. People with MBA degrees from prestigious universities, people with corporate connections, people who looked the part in ways she never could. Mrs. Chen was waiting in the hallway with Amy and Ben. How did it go? She asked in her kind, gentle way. I think it went well, Lisa said, scooping Ben into a hug. We'll know soon enough. That evening, Lisa helped the kids with homework while trying not to think about her phone. Amy was working on a math worksheet and Ben was practicing writing his letters. Normal life continued, but everything felt suspended, waiting for news that might change their future. Mommy, are we going to have to move? Amy asked quietly, not looking up from her math problems. Lisa's heart broke a little. Amy was too young to have to worry about things like rent and evictions. But she was old enough to understand that something was wrong when the phone calls from the landlord kept coming. I don't know yet, sweetheart, Lisa said honestly. But I'm doing everything I can to make sure we get to stay in our home. At 7:30 p.m., just as Lisa was getting Ben ready for his bath, her phone rang. She almost didn't answer it because she didn't recognize the number, but something made her pick up. Hello, is this Lisa Rodriguez? Yes, this is Lisa. This is Jonathan Sterling from Sterling Tech. I hope I'm not calling too late. Lisa's heart stopped. CEOs of major corporations didn't personally call job candidates, especially not at 7:30 in the evening. This had to be bad news delivered with a personal touch to soften the blow. No, not at all, she managed to say. Thank you for calling. Lisa, I want to offer you the position of Senior Financial Analyst with Sterling Tech. The words didn't make sense at first. Lisa had to replay them in her mind twice before they sank in. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I'm offering you the job, CEO Sterling said, and she could hear him smiling through the phone. Your analysis today was exactly what we've been looking for. In fact, it was better than anything our current team has produced in the past 2 years. Lisa sank into her kitchen chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. Are you certain? There were so many other qualified candidates, 33 others, he confirmed, and not one of them came prepared with actionable solutions. They had impressive resumes and polished presentations about their qualifications. But you showed us actual work. You identified problems we didn't even know we had, and presented realistic solutions to fix them. Lisa's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. I don't know what to say. The position comes with a starting salary of $78,000, full health benefits, and a performance bonus structure that could add another $15,000 in your first year if you implement the cost-saving measures you outlined today. $78,000. Lisa had never imagined earning that much money in her entire life. When she worked at the small accounting firm, she made $32,000 a year and felt grateful for it. Mr. Sterling, she started, but her voice cracked. Take your time, he said gently. I know this is a lot to process. Can I ask you something? Lisa said, trying to steady her voice. Why me? I mean, I know my analysis was good, but surely some of those other candidates had better credentials on paper. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Lisa, can I tell you something about how I built this company? Of course. 25 years ago, I was sitting in a waiting room not unlike the one you were in today. I was wearing my father's old suit that didn't fit properly, and my shoes were so old that the sole was separating from the leather. Sound familiar? Lisa's eyes filled with tears. Very familiar. The other candidates that day made jokes about my appearance. They assumed I was there by mistake, or that I was applying for a lower-level position. But the interviewer saw past all of that. He saw that I had spent weeks researching his company and had come prepared with ideas that could help them grow. What happened? He hired me as a junior analyst. Within 5 years, I was running the department. 10 years later, I bought the company. And today that company became Sterling Tech. Lisa was crying now, not caring that CEO Sterling could probably hear it through the phone. I heard some of the comments those candidates made about you today, he continued. And it reminded me that talent doesn't always come in the package people expect. Your presentation showed me the kind of thinking that builds successful companies. But more than that, your honesty about why you needed this job showed me the kind of character that I want representing Sterling Tech. I don't know how to thank you, Lisa whispered. You can thank me by starting Monday morning and showing my team how to save us $1.2 million, he said with a laugh. HR will call you tomorrow with all the details about benefits and your start date. And Lisa? Yes? Welcome to Sterling Tech. I have a feeling you're going to do amazing things here. After Lisa hung up the phone, she sat in her kitchen for a long moment, staring at the wall and trying to process what had just happened. Then she heard Amy calling from the living room. Mommy, who was on the phone. Lisa walked into the living room where both kids were watching cartoons. She sat down between them on the couch and pulled them close. That was my new boss, she said, her voice full of wonder. Mommy got the job. Amy looked up at her with wide eyes. Does that mean we don't have to move? We don't have to move, Lisa confirmed, kissing the top of her daughter's head. We're going to be just fine. For the first time in 8 months, that wasn't just hope talking. It was the truth. 6 months later, Lisa walked through the same revolving doors at Sterling Tech, but everything was different now. Her navy blue suit was perfectly tailored, her shoes were elegant and new, and most importantly, the confidence in her step was real. She wasn't pretending anymore. She belonged here. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor had become routine, but Lisa still remembered that first terrifying trip with her taped shoe and desperate hope. Now she was heading to the executive conference room for the quarterly board meeting, where she would present the results of her cost-saving initiatives to Sterling Tech's board of directors. "Good morning." "Lisa," called Janet from accounting as she passed by. "Ready for the big presentation?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Lisa smiled back. Over the past 6 months, she had become something she never expected, popular among her colleagues. Not because she tried to fit in, but because she genuinely cared about making the company better and helping her teammates succeed. Her office was on the 28th floor now, with a view of the city that still took her breath away some mornings. On her desk sat a framed photo of Amy and Ben on their first day at their new school, a better school in a safer neighborhood that they could finally afford. Next to it was the quarterly report she had just finished, showing the actual results of her vendor consolidation project. The numbers were even better than she had promised in her interview. Sterling Tech had saved $1.4 million in the first 6 months alone, and her cybersecurity recommendations had prevented 2 major data breaches that could have cost the company millions more. But Lisa was most proud of something that couldn't be measured in dollars. She had changed how Sterling Tech hired people. It started 3 months into her job, when CEO Sterling asked her to join the hiring committee for new financial analysts. Lisa sat in the same conference room where she had been interviewed, watching candidate after candidate present polished resumes and rehearsed answers. "They all sound exactly the same," she told Sterling after a particularly long day of interviews. "Perfect credentials, perfect answers, but no real insights about how to actually improve our operations." "What would you do differently?" he asked. "Stop looking at where people went to school and start looking at what they can actually do," Lisa said. "Give them real problems to solve instead of asking them to recite their qualifications." Sterling Tech's new hiring process became the talk of the industry. Instead of focusing on university names and previous company logos, they gave candidates actual Sterling Tech data and asked them to identify problems and propose solutions. They stopped caring about expensive suits and started caring about innovative thinking. The results were immediate. The 3 analysts hired using Lisa's method had already identified inefficiencies that the traditional hires had missed for years. More importantly, Sterling Tech was attracting diverse talent from backgrounds that had never been considered before. Lisa thought about this as she walked into the board meeting. Around the polished conference table sat 12 of the most powerful business leaders in the city. A year ago, she would have been intimidated by their presence. Today, she knew she had earned her seat at this table. "Ladies and gentlemen," CEO Sterling began, "I'd like Lisa Rodriguez to present the results of our operational efficiency initiative." Lisa stood and activated the presentation screen. Her first slide showed a simple comparison. Sterling Tech's costs in January versus Sterling Tech's costs in June. The savings were dramatic and undeniable. "When I joined Sterling Tech 6 months ago," she began, "I promised to save the company $1.2 million in the first year. I'm happy to report that we've already exceeded that goal by $200,000, and we're only halfway through the year." The board members leaned forward, clearly impressed, but Lisa wasn't finished. "More importantly, we've used these savings to invest in our employees and our infrastructure. The money we saved on redundant vendor contracts allowed us to give every employee a 3% raise and upgrade our cybersecurity systems." Board member Patricia Williams raised her hand. "Lisa, these results are remarkable. But I understand you've also been working on changing our hiring practices." "That's correct," Lisa said, switching to her next slide. "We implemented what we call performance-based interviewing 3 months ago. Instead of focusing on credentials, we evaluate candidates based on their ability to solve real problems." She clicked to a slide showing the results. "The analysts we hired using this method have generated an additional $800,000 in savings that our previous hiring approach missed entirely. Can you give us a specific example?" asked another board member. Lisa smiled. "Certainly. Rebecca Chen was a candidate who had been unemployed for 6 months after her previous company downsized.
She had a degree from a state school instead of an Ivy League university.
And she showed up to her interview in an older suit that had clearly seen better days." The board members were listening intently now. Under our old system, she probably wouldn't have made it past the initial screening. But we gave her our standard analysis test and she identified a problem with our payroll processing that was costing us $15,000 every month. She's now our junior analyst and has already saved the company more money than analysts with MBA degrees from prestigious universities. CEO Sterling nodded approvingly. Tell them about the scholarship program. Lisa's next slide showed Sterling Tech's new internship and scholarship initiative. We've partnered with 3 local community colleges to offer scholarships and paid internships to students who show analytical promise, regardless of their financial background. We're not just hiring differently. We're helping create the diverse talent pipeline that companies like ours need to stay competitive. After the presentation, the board unanimously approved expanding Lisa's initiatives company-wide. But the conversation that followed was what mattered most to her. Lisa, said board member Robert Kim, your story has been inspiring to watch. But I'm curious about something personal. How has this change affected your family? Lisa thought about Amy and Ben, now thriving in their new school, taking piano lessons and playing soccer without Lisa having to worry about the cost. She thought about their new apartment in a safe neighborhood, and how she could finally buy groceries without calculating every dollar. It's given my children something I never had growing up, she said, the confidence that comes from knowing their basic needs are secure. But more than that, it's shown them that hard work and preparation matter more than where you come from or what you wear to an interview. As the meeting ended, CEO Sterling walked with Lisa back to the elevator. You know, he said, when I hired you, I thought I was getting a talented financial analyst. I didn't realize I was getting someone who would transform how this entire company thinks about talent and potential. I just wanted to make sure other people like me would get a fair chance. Lisa replied. People like you, Sterling repeated thoughtfully. You mean people with broken shoes and secondhand suits? I mean people with more hunger than polish, Lisa said. People who will work harder than anyone else because they know what it's like to have everything on the line. That evening, Lisa picked up Amy and Ben from their after-school program. As they walked to their car, a reliable used Honda that she had been able to buy with her first bonus, Amy looked up at her. Mom, my teacher said you came to talk to her class about careers last week. I did. I told them that it doesn't matter where you start. It matters how hard you're willing to work to get where you want to go. Like you did with your broken shoe? Ben asked, who had heard the story many times now. Exactly like that, Lisa said, laughing. Sometimes the things that make us different are actually the things that make us strong. As they drove home to their new neighborhood, Lisa thought about the woman with the expensive handbag who had made fun of her in the waiting room that day. She had heard through industry connections that the woman was still job hunting, unable to find a position that met her salary expectations. Lisa felt no satisfaction in this. Instead, she felt grateful. Grateful for the broken shoe that had taught her what really mattered. Grateful for CEO Sterling, who had seen past appearances to recognize potential, and most grateful for the lesson she was now teaching her children, that authenticity and hard work would always triumph over superficial impressions. The broken shoe sat in her office drawer now, not as a reminder of hardship, but as a symbol of the day everything changed, the day she learned that sometimes what looks like your biggest weakness can become your greatest strength.